What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode for the Men in Uncaged. If you don't know, this channel is all about the journey to the top 1% and how do we get there. It's by becoming 1% better daily. And today I wanted to talk about how you do one thing is how you do everything. It's been something that's been top of mind lately. I've seen a lot of conversations be had on the subject. I've also interjected myself and given my opinions and thoughts on it. Literally actually just recorded a podcast with this information mentioned inside of it. To be released at another date between myself and another one of the Uncaged members. So it's something that's I've been seeing a lot of. And the thing is, you know, whether you're religious or you're not, whether you believe in God or karma or, you know, energies, whatever it is, I'm going to use God for this instance because I'm a Christian, is, you know, we see people that pray to God and ask God for strength. And then God sends us a workout. He wants to exercise us. He wants, well, how do you ever become stronger at anything? It's by putting whatever that muscle is through time under tension. You break it down, and then you recover it, and then you grow. And your brain being a muscle, there's really nothing else to do except for that. It's you come up to a scenario, you go through the process of learning from it, of experiencing it, breaking it down, and you recover. And through that recovery process, the idea is you learned something, right? Anyways, we've really started to notice that like men or people in general lately get sent these exercises, these workouts, if you will. And instead of finding a way to process it, to develop a better system for when this happens again, we just simply make an excuse for it, right? We brush it off. We try to find the laziest route through the process, and through that, we just kind of look at God and they're like, well, you know, one day you're going to come save me. Whereas God saving us is more than likely the test that he's giving us, because at some point in the future, we're going to need the knowledge that we derive from being put under that pressure and that strength to accomplish something larger later on. Because what's going to end up happening is we go through life without ever experiencing these hardships, without learning through the struggles. And at some point, we are going to get to an objective, a wall, an objection, a roadblock, whatever you want to call it, that we can't get through. We can't get around and we can't get over. And the tools that we needed to be able to do so are stuck way far down the journey at that issue, that problem, that workout that we were given that we skipped out on. And, you know, throughout this process, and some of these conversations, it's really kind of dawned on me on what compounding confidence looks like. And so throughout the experience that I've seen some of these members go through is, it doesn't necessarily matter which arena of your life you start with. Health, wealth, relationships. I mean, we could keep going on, making money, saving time. At some point, you have to pick something. And you have to find a way to improve. And, you know, we talk about it in business a lot, like your SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. I run SWOT analysis on, you know, any of my clients. If I'm working with anyone inside of Uncaged and I'm helping consult their business, I do it with Uncaged. Previously, you know, at my previous organization that I owned, we ran this on every client that came through. We did a SWOT analysis on yourself. We did a SWOT analysis on all your competitors so that we could find strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And that's how we derived our action plans. That's how we came up with our strategy to overcoming competition. And, you know, in life, the competition is the current version of yourself. You should always be striving to improve. And so when we find times where maybe we hit a roadblock on something that we're good at, right? Like we're focused on improving our strengths, like getting 1% better daily in the areas of our strengths, and we hit a roadblock where there is no way to accomplish it until we do some defensive work, which means all the threats that we're facing, all the weaknesses that we're facing, until we improve those. Because as we're constantly growing, you'll see that there's areas of your life that can afford to be put on the back burner while you prioritize some of your other weaknesses. Because the objective here is, and we use a lot of made up words inside of Uncaged to kind of represent this, but it's like to become unfuckwithable, right? Like be hard to kill. We use some of these phrases that might sound a little polarizing, but the concept is as creating this well-rounded creature, this well-rounded man that is deadly on all fronts. And deadly doesn't have to be something aggressive. But when you start to really think about like the polarity in which we attack improvement is understanding with conviction what's on the other side of the failure. And we use failure as being hitting one of these workouts that we've been given and not learning the lesson. That's when we fail, right? We fail when we stop, when we fail when we give up. And so, throughout this process is understanding that as we go down this journey of self-improvement, 1% becomes more and more incremental growth, but it becomes more and more monumental steps because, where we were a year ago, a decade ago, 1% better in any area of our life is insignificant when you compare it to who we are today. But what gets exciting is when you start to think about where we will be in a year or a decade from now. Because when you start thinking about the incremental growth over time and what 1% better a daily in the future looks like, man, how incredible is it to think about the way we improve in all areas of our life. But anyways, to kind of bring it back full circle and talk about, how you do one thing is how you do everything, is I had the conversation with one of the other members, and we were talking about how when he joined Uncaged, he already had an incredible relationship, but his incredible relationship improved. And it was not really something that he was like focused on. And what's so cool to me about that is that's the point. That's the objective of surrounding yourself with like-minded men that are constantly looking to improve themselves daily, is that you accidentally start improving. Because when you start looking at like this compounding confidence that you get by these micro victories that you get, and what I mean by the micro victories and what I mean by your 1% better daily, like previously being insignificant to like who you are comparatively today, is when you're first starting to work out, right? You're just now starting to go to the gym, whatever the case is, you learn to prioritize your health. So you're adding in an extra, 60 minutes. You're waking up earlier. You're getting things knocked out of the way because you understand if you put it off later in the day, it's not going to get done. You're learning how to prioritize your health first to set the rest of your day up for success because of the endorphins, the, dopamine, all that. Anyways, my point behind this is at first, when you first start out, that 1% better daily is just waking up earlier. Like that's it. And I know that sounds so insignificant, but if you think about the fact that if you keep hitting the snooze button, you run out of time to work out. And therefore you lose all that compounding growth that you would have succeeded in if you had not hit snooze. So phase one of this process of becoming 1% better daily, right, and compounding growth and then compounding, confidence is, not hitting the snooze button. Or actually, let's back up even further. Maybe it's just waking up earlier, right? Maybe your alarm gets set the night before, and that's like literally like ground zero. Phase one is setting an alarm the night before. And then the next step is, okay, my phone's going off, I hit snooze, my phone's going off, I hit snooze, my phone's going off, I hit snooze. I still wake up and I still go to the gym, yada, yada, yada. But I kept hitting snooze, right? And now we're starting to see where we are failing because we said we were going to wake up at a certain time and we constantly hit the snooze button, right? So then we take that level of energy with us throughout the day. And mind you, if this is the first fucking thing that we've done, we're not setting ourselves up for success, are we? So you hit snooze a couple of times, therefore giving yourself permission to take it easy in the gym. So you kind of mosey out the door. You don't get out of the door on time, which means now you have to cut your workout short. So cutting your workout short, you do kind of one of two things. You either rush through it, you skip some exercises altogether, whatever the case is. Because you didn't, have a successful workout, you carry, again, that energy into your work life. And because you carry it into your work life and everything compounds on everything, because how you do one thing's how you do everything, is now this negative momentum is pulling you down at work. So you're being sluggish. Maybe you're a little bit tired because you didn't get some of that energy burnt out. You just are constantly scrolling on social media. You didn't get your projects completed like you were supposed to. You left a bunch of to-do list for you the next morning. So now you're, throughout work, you're just being pulled further and further down, which means now you're stressed, you're anxious, you get done with work, you go home, you've got all that compounded weight on your shoulders. The kid says something, does something, the dog, makes a mess, your wife says something that you don't agree with, whatever the case is, and all that built up energy comes exploding out, whatever the case looks like. You start to feel bad for yourself. You're upset that you did that because you know it's not right, blah, blah, blah. Now you're going to bed. You're frustrated. You and your wife aren't having sex because you were a dick. You're going to bed just staring at the ceiling. It's going to take you a minute to go to sleep because your mind's racing all the things that you could have done better throughout the day. And it all goes all the way back to setting your alarm and waking up. And then the next step is, when your alarm goes off, not hitting snooze. Like making a definitive decision to get the fuck up. And then you get up. And again, victory. Then you go to the gym. That's another victory, right? Then you crush your workout. That's another victory. Then you take that same momentum on with you to work. And then you get these projects done, task after task after task, victory after victory after victory. Then you go home and you pour into your wife. You pour into your child. Victory, huge victories, right? And so this story is all to say that at one point in my life, or in your life, priority, whatever you want to call it, at one point, setting my alarm was my 1% better daily. That's not impactful in my life anymore because it is my life. That is my habits. That is, I have a new neurocycle that has been created because I set my alarms and I wake up without hitting the snooze button. But after you accomplish that, your next 1% better is going to the gym. Now, you might get in a workout in, but then that next big phase is actually committing, is actually going to the gym. That's the next hump that you have to get over. There has literally been, I don't know how many times, but definitely more than once, maybe even more than I can count on my hands, or on one hand. I've actually driven to the gym, sat in the parking lot, and left. And it's not because I'm not committed to the cause. Something came up. Either it was an excuse or something that over-prioritized it. But literally understanding that just driving to the gym is part of that victory. The next is actually going into the gym. Then you have multiple different ways you can check off the box of, did you go to the gym? Did you just fucking go to the gym and go through the motions? Or did you actually fucking crush it? Two totally different types of workouts. You start going through this process, and you're going through this process, and going through this process, and eventually it gets where it's no longer an actual critical task for you. It just is life. And because of that, that is that compounding growth day over day, week over week, month over month, quarter over quarter, year over year, decade over decade, right? As this becomes your new way of thinking, new problems arise. But you now have this compounding confidence because you understood that, hey, it might not be fun waking up in a whole extra earlier. Like, oh, like, how do we look at this? Cutting 1 hour worth of sleep out of your day. Maybe you go to sleep 1 hour earlier. Okay, well, then that cuts 1 hour of my day away from me. Okay, let's look at these negatives. Is that all we're doing is looking at the negatives, or how do we look at the positives? How does you waking up early, physically getting exercise in, all the health benefits of actually working out that we talk about in the 30-day challenge in the health section, how can we look at all of that and see how that doesn't improve other areas of our life? Like how efficient we are at work. We start looking at some of the areas for improvement, that SWOT analysis for our work. We go through a shit ton of this in the 30-day challenge. Like, what are skill sets? We go through the Eisenhower matrix, like you name it, on how do we create certain analyses to figure out how you can become more efficient, right? Throughout that, we start to pay attention to these victories, how we're improving. Because as we start to grow and as we start to focus on things that matter to us, I'm looking at this huge 4 foot by 6 foot yearly calendar that I'm looking at. How do we prioritize things based on what makes us feel more confident, so that that confidence can bleed over into our business or our job, so that way we become more efficient. Confidence into efficiency. And those efficiencies at work lead us to making more money, saving more time, right? Which gives us other added benefits, and then the confidence we need to take into other areas of our life, like home life after work, pouring into our spouse, pouring into our children, taking care of our home, handling our manly duties, right? What does that look like? This compounding confidence of knowing that we are the man that we say that we are, and we do what the fuck we say we're going to do when we say we're going to do it. What does that do when our wives look at us? Does that make our relationship better? What about our children? How do our children look at us? Are you the type of daddy that she can count on? Are you the type of daddy that he wants to grow up to be? And all this starts to bleed over through confidence. And, we talked about it on the podcast that we recorded today. Part of that is, these wives noticing that we're improving. And what's cool about it is the way we kind of explained it is, ironically enough, we should all be focused on improvement. And there's nothing wrong with my wife. There's nothing wrong with myself. Well, there's a lot wrong. But let's just take into consideration, for the sake of this conversation, that we can agree that everyone has room for improvement, right? So if I'm already in love with my wife, and my wife improves, how much more in love with her am I going to be? So if we can start to kind of comprehend that thought process, then why is the reverse not applicable? So all the while that I'm focused on improving myself, and my wife's already attracted to me, how does that deepen that attraction? That the more that I focus on myself, the more that I focus on improving in all areas of my life, health, wealth, and relationships, making money, saving time, that this does not improve my relationship. Same thing with my daughter. My daughter already looks up to me. She sees me doing things. She sees me staying committed to things. She sees that if I say something, I'm going to do it. And so if I start improving that, how much stronger of a bond are we going to have? How much more of a pure value is she going to have of me? That's my dad. He kills it in everything. My dad says he's going to do something, and that motherfucker does it. You know, that was one of, we were at Cabo for a trip, and I think it was Bobby and Sophia Castro. It might have been Keith. I can't remember exactly who it was in the breakout room, because it was the words that my wife said that meant the most to me. You know, for those of you who don't know, my wife and I were friends almost a decade before we got married. And so she had seen all the good, the bad, the ugly. If you've read my book, all those stories, she was there and witnessed it. She was in my friend group. But anyways, you know, my wife said something, and she said that anything that this motherfucker wants to do, he fucking does it. Why is our relationship not that important? And dude, when I tell you that hit me with equal amount of pride as it did sorrow, is I got to see the fact that the way my wife looked at me, my wife sees me as being successful at whatever I put my mind to. Now, it was hard to hear, because there was areas of our relationship that she wanted me to focus on, that I was brushing under the rug because I was too blinded by what I was doing inside the organizations at the time. But it took me hearing that to truly start to comprehend that everything starts to flow inside of each other. Because when we look at our life and people judge work-life balance or work-life integration or life-work balance, like whatever the fuck you want to call it, if you start to look at it as a whole, as our life, and being successful in life, when we start to focus on how we do one thing is how we do everything, because I was not pouring into my wife, because I wasn't pouring into my relationship, my business was suffering. And because my business was suffering, I was trying to run and put out those fires. And I kept putting a focus on it, instead of putting a focus on my life as a whole. Instead of realizing that I first needed to show up for myself, because that was something that I often neglected. But because I wasn't showing up for myself, I wasn't showing up for my wife. Because I wasn't showing up for my wife, I wasn't showing up for my daughter. Because I wasn't showing up for my home, I was trying to show up for my business. And I was overcompensating with my business because lack of education, if I'm being honest. I didn't know what I'm speaking on now. I did not realize that all of this was intertwined. So the more that I pulled time and attention away from myself, the more I pulled time and attention away from my wife and daughter, my home, the business suffered. But I kept just staying focused on the business, trying to fix the business, instead of trying to fix me. Because I realized I was over here pretending to be something I wasn't. I was pretending like I could solve the problems in the business. But in all reality, I couldn't solve those problems because I had not solved the problems for myself and my relationships. Because I didn't realize that how you do one thing is how you do everything. I thought I could just go crush it over here and all the rest of this will just handle itself. It took time. It took attention. It took understanding that I was the problem and that I was also the solution. So, you know, if you're watching this episode, the real main thing that I want to kind of get through is, if you feel like you're failing in certain areas of your life, I want you to take a deep dive and see what parts of your life you are not focused on and you are not trying to improve, and you will probably find the answer to why some other area in your life is falling behind. It's because you are not focused on improving every area of your life, and you had yet to truly believe that how you do one thing is how you do everything. Guys, if this meant something to you, if you got something from this, please give us a like, give us a comment. Let us know what your takeaway was. Share this with someone that you think needs it, because we are out here trying to get this information to more men like yourself. We love you, and we'll see you on the next one.